square, wide, square, wide, square, wide. Why? Why did we abandon this fabulous boxy era of glory and move to this letterbox affair of despair? Most of us didn't even question it. One day we had a TV like this, the next we had a TV like this. It was just progress, the way things were, the future. But when we look at the future in films like RoboCop and The Terminator, this wasn't part of it. What happened? To answer that question, we really have to go back, way back to when this picture size was instigated. Good old 4x3, otherwise known as 1.33 to 1. We refer to it as a square box, but really it's a rectangle, just, well, a less oblong rectangle. In 1888, Thomas Edison filed a patent for a device for the first motion picture camera, and to operate it would need roll film. Kodak were already using celluloid roll film for their box cameras. However, at 70mm wide, he deemed it too wide and fragile to capture a moving image. So William Dixon, an employee of Edison's, decided to take a roll and cut it in half, creating a 35mm reel. He then punched 64 perforations for every foot, and like that, 35mm celluloid film was born. The edge perforations would set the frame width to 24.89mm. However, for the vertical size, Dixon decided that 4 perforations would be suitable, which equated to 18.66mm, giving the dimensions of 1.33 to 1 or 4x3. This standard would dominate in cinema until the 1950s, but the 50s would witness a slow period for the film industry, and so filmmakers looked at ways to pull people back in, whilst also differentiating from the new boxes that were appearing in living rooms around the world. Due to its additional frame height, 4x3 was great for single points of focus or depth staging. However, for landscapes or large groups, it suffers. Widescreen had been experimented with in different ratios before now. However, it was Cinerama that really caught people's imagination.
Cinema history was made in Glasgow. The newly named Coliseum Cinerama Theatre now seats 1,300.
This method combined 3 35mm cameras to capture the image for a huge wraparound screen, which likewise needed 3 projectors to show. Compared to what had gone before, this felt like full immersion. However, using 3 cameras and projectors had its problems, not to mention it was expensive. It was 20th Century Fox who came up with a much cheaper alternative called CinemaScope. By repurposing French technology used to give tank drivers a wider field of view, these anamorphic lenses were kitted out to cameras, allowing a much wider view to be squished onto 35mm film. To reverse the process, the projectors were fitted with the same lens, allowing a glorious 2.66 to 1 image ratio, which was ultimately distilled to 2.35 to 1 after the inclusion of magnetic and optical audio tracks. It was later refined to 2.39 to 1 to conceal splices, but from here on we're going to refer to it as 2.35. For a while, companies like Paramount would license 20th Century Fox's technology. However, this would quickly become expensive and annoying, so they decided to create their own. Instead of using a lens, their idea was simple. Rather than running film vertically through a camera, they would run it horizontally, allowing them to define any width they liked. They called this camera system VistaVision, and it would accommodate a variety of aspect ratios, including 1.33, 1.66, 1.85 and 2 to 1, with 1.85 being their recommended ratio. Why did they choose this? Well, according to their optical experts, this frame size encompasses the comfortable viewing area. In other words, we naturally see in a ratio of 1.85 to 1. If you hold your hands out to the side until your peripheral vision can barely see them, and then do the same vertically, it should create a box that's roughly 1.85 to 1 in dimensions. So, slap yourself in the middle of a cinema and you should be able to see the entirety of the screen. It's also slap bang in the middle between the 1.33 and 2.35 ratios, offering a great compromise between the large amounts of space offered by other formats and the tight close quarters offered by 1.33 or 4x3 to you and I. You could do close-up shots without too much distraction, but also wider encompassing shots with little constraint. Most Hollywood films of the 80s and 90s that we're familiar with were shot in this ratio. However, in the 80s and 90s, pretty much all televisions were still in the 4:3 format, and to be honest, we seemed pretty happy about it. Most family viewing seemed perfectly at home in this format. After all, most of our digested content were game shows and news broadcasts, which mostly featured close-ups of people and their faces. If we wanted to watch a film at home, we'd just have to put up with black bars or a heavily cropped picture. It was no biggie. At the same time, it seemed like an optimal fit for home computing, a compromise between the world of desktop publishing that often consisted of more vertical real estate for productivity and the world of cinema that felt a bit too wide to fit on a desk like this.
If you don't, I will shoot both you and your dumb dog.
But with the advance of huge televisions offering a home cinema experience, it was felt that a compromise should be made, and so groups around the world were convened to come up with a suitable alternative to our beloved 4:3. It's at this point that HDTV and widescreen become intrinsically linked. Way back in 1972, Japan proposed a new CCIR study program to work on an analog, high-definition television system. Ultimately utilizing 2D filtering, dot interlacing, motion vector compensation, line sequential color encoding, and time compression, it managed to cram a 20 MHz analog bandwidth source signal into just 8.1 MHz. However, creating all this took time and discussion, and signals wouldn't begin broadcasting until December 1988. The initial aspect ratio for this high vision system was 2:1. At around the same time, Sony released this. This is the HDM 3830 color monitor, and it's a beast. This CRT not only has a 38-inch visible picture, but it can take a 1080i input. And yeah, you can plug a PS5 into this thing and play until your heart's content. No wonder it cost a whopping $70,000 at launch. Yeah. But key here is that this set has a 16:9 screen ratio, or 1.77:1, which is not what Japan's high vision team were working towards, not initially at least. Off the back of Japan's CCIR study program, an international interim working party had been formed in 1983, which led to a meeting in the same year where various HD television systems were demonstrated from around the world. This led to a proposal for a new recommendation of parameter values for signal generation in HDTV studios. By 1986, 19 proposals for HDTV standardization were submitted, and by October 1987, a recommendation by various European countries was proposed with the following parameters: number of active lines 1152, field rate 50 Hz, scanning method progressive, aspect ratio 19:9 or 2.1:1, samples per line 1920 for luminance and 960 for color difference. Meanwhile, over in the States, with their 60 Hz field rates and own views, the Society of Motion Picture and Television Engineers were also working towards a standard. Back in 1984, a member of this team, known as Kearns H. Powers, was also considering widescreen alternatives. Cunningly, he laid out all the main existing film and broadcasting ratios in front of him, overlapping their center points. He then measured the outer area that all these ratios fitted into and discovered that it equaled 1.77:1, equating to 16:9. Not only that, but the centerpiece where all the ratios overlapped had a ratio of 1.78:1, which rounded would also equate to a 16:9 ratio. In other words, it's the geometric mean of the most two common extremes of ratios, 4:3 and 2.35. Powers postulated that if all home televisions were 16:9, it would therefore be much easier to encompass all the most common picture ratios and keep everyone happy. At least that was the theory, and it seemed that Sony, at least, agreed. It was at the CCIR 17th Plenary Assembly in 1990 that all groups would finally agree, and it was Recommendation 709 which everyone voted on, specifying a 16:9 aspect ratio as recommended by Kearns H. Powers. By 1991, Japan's Muse and High Vision system was broadcasting in 16:9, with America testing the same system and ultimately using a version with slightly less vertical lines. And by 1993, the European Union had instituted a 16:9 action plan to accelerate the development of television broadcasts in this new aspect ratio. By the time Japan had released DVD video in 1996, there was no going back, with 16:9 the only widescreen aspect ratio natively supported by the format. Due to differences in regions, a number of parameters such as number of lines, field, and picture rates were left unspecified, and it wouldn't be until 1997 that a 1920x1080 common image format for future HDTV systems was put forward, and finally approved through recommendation ITU-R BT.709 in the year 2000. This not only firmed up the aspect ratio globally, but allowed manufacturers and broadcasters to all be working towards common HDTV production variables, avoiding problematic proprietary issues and expensive costs. 720p and 1080i essentially acted as compromises in lieu and where necessary. So then, that's how we ended up with 16:9 displays on our TV stands, walls and desks, ready for the HD takeover. Although actually, it wasn't quite that simple, because as you can imagine, PC owners were doing their own thing. Bloody PC owners. 16:10. Yep, that's the aspect ratio we settled for, just to be a pain in the arse. And for almost a decade, it stuck. Up until 2003, most monitors were still 4:3, but by 2005, 16:10 was outselling 4:3 as the aspect ratio of choice for new LCD monitors. Converted to our common HD notions, this would equate to a resolution of 1920x1200, otherwise known as WUXGA. Why was 16:10 chosen? Well, it's more practical and more productive. Take two sheets of paper, A4, A5, a book, they all fit side by side much better on a 16:10 display compared to 16:9. Same if you turn an A4 page to landscape. Just think back to the desktop publishing monitors from the 90s. They were designed to fit an entire page on one screen. Thankfully, with advancements in screen resolution, it made sense to do the same but with two pages on a flat panel. It's better for reading books, it's better for writing documents, it's better for browsing the internet, it's better for, well, most things that you do on a PC, arguably even gaming. The reason we suddenly all rushed to 16:9 monitors before 2010 was really due to economies of scale, which is pretty important in the world of business. After all, higher efficiency leads to a lower cost, which is key for sponsor AMD as well. When you're running a business, even a small one, hardware is one of the most important items you have to purchase, secure and care for, with one aspect being crucial: energy efficiency, and the processor you have makes a huge difference to that. Just head to pecalculator.amd.com and see how much money you can save with the right CPU. With their Ryzen Pro processor, AMD offers next-generation energy-efficient performance. With up to 50% power improvement and a 70% longer battery life, an AMD processor can power your laptop all day. We're talking up to 29 hours. In total, Ryzen Pro offers up to 8 high-performance processing cores to power ultra-efficient business laptops. So, when you're checking out new laptops for your business, be it Lenovo ThinkPads or HP EliteBooks, remember that processor matters, just like every watt matters. Check out the link in the video description for more. With flat panel televisions all now being produced in 16:9 ratios, and apparently with enough square pixels to use as PC monitors, it made it much cheaper to purchase a 16:9 panel than a 16:10 panel, which were reserved almost exclusively for PC use. It also stopped certain folks from having childhood flashbacks to seeing black bars when watching movies or viewing content recorded on their 16:9 perspective cameras. Of course, standardization makes everything easier, not just for shooting films, but also for developing software and games, and by March 2011, 16:9 at 1920 by 1080 had already become the most common resolution for Steam users. So then, the entire world was dragged kicking and screaming from 4:3 to 16:9 in less than 10 years. Of course, these other ratios still remain, and in fact with 16:10 found on most Android tablets, on MacBooks and even the Steam Deck, it is slowly starting to make a return to our desks and laptops. Whilst 4:3 can be found, well, it can be found in my office, in Wes Anderson films, and in the homes of every enthusiastic retro gamer in the country. And of course you can buy a variety of other screens in other aspect ratios, should that be your thing. Basically, people are like ladybirds, never happy. Just like the never-ending wheels of capitalism, which I'm sure will make us buy brand new aspect ratio TVs in a mere few years' time. Until next time, I've been Nostalgia Nerd. Toodaloo.